What is up, harvesters? My name is Ken. Welcome back to my subscribers. If you haven't subscribed yet, I hope you consider doing so by the end of this video. So today I want to talk to you guys about how to save a failed food plot. No, it is not too late yet. You actually have quite a bit of time, and I know that might be surprising as we're already a week into the season. So what you can do if you have a failed food plot is, of course, winter rye. Winter rye is the save-all, end-all of food plots. Now, you can just put in a winter rye food plot all on its own just to start. You're most likely going to have success with it because that stuff will literally grow anywhere. I've seen it grow in the bed of my truck. I've seen it grow in a gravel driveway. It grows anywhere. So if you have a failed food plot or just patches of a failed food plot, you want to throw winter rye down on those failed areas. So here in southeastern Wisconsin, I had half of my food plot fail on me. Now, what happened is a mix of a couple of things. So this year we had amazing weather for planting all summer long. My summer cover crop of buckwheat was probably the best crop of buckwheat I've ever had. And when I crimped it, I had a nice rain coming. Everything was going absolutely perfectly for me. So I got that seed down, I crimped that buckwheat. It was perfect. We had a 3-day forecast of rain in the future, which turned into maybe only about a day and a half of rain, but we still got at least that inch of rain. You want at least 1 to 2 inches of rain a week to have the ideal situation for food plotting. I know we cannot control that, but just looking at the weather, that is your ideal situation. So we did get that right away, and I did get some germination out of my smaller seeds right away, which was expected, my brassicas, and then I planted oats as a nurse crop. Those all came up right away. But my big seeds, my peas and my beans, I had a little bit of germination, but not much. And then what happened is we hit a drought. So we didn't get enough consistent rain to get those larger seeds to germinate. I also noticed that I had another issue. So when I planted, we had not gotten rain previous to that rain we were supposed to get right after I planted. So the ground was very hard. So even though I did roll over it with a lawn roller and with the tires of the four-wheeler when I crimped that buckwheat to get it mashed into the dirt was so hard that it didn't get pushed very far into the dirt. So that's another reason why I could have had the failed germination of that. But with that rain, it should have softened up the dirt, and the seeds that I could find were sunk deep enough into the dirt, although not completely covered, which you're going to get when you broadcast seed like this. I did not drill the seed in, I just hand broadcasted the seed. So you're gonna still get some seed on top of the soil, but you still should get germination if you get all of that rain that we ended up not getting. Yet, like I said, we did get that first rain right away like we were supposed to, but you can't plan when you plant for the next week and the week after and the week after and the week after to keep getting consistent rain. So even though we didn't have a drought here in southeastern Wisconsin all summer, of course, after I throw my seed down in my food plot, then we hit the driest time of the year, which is not typical, but that's what happened this year. So then eventually we did get some rain, and we got 6 inches of rain in a day and a half. So then I had flooding issues on my food plots as well. So there's some spots that you can still see to this day that held water for a long time, and I have bare spots or withered spots in the plot because of that. And you can actually see that there's like quite a few deer tracks going through that area in the mud. It's still pretty muddy even though we've been semi-dry, or we're getting back more into that 1 to 2 inches of rain a week, which we need. But it's left me with a food plot that basically only has oats on the one side, and that's now about 6 weeks old, so it's getting to be less desirable to the deer. And on the other side, I do actually have a pretty decent stand of brassicas. The brassicas are looking very good. And for those of you guys that know that I redesigned this food plot this year, you don't typically want to plant brassicas in the same spot more than 2 years in a row, but it's good to even rotate them every other year. But because I redesigned the food plot, there is a spot on the food plot where brassicas were planted 2 years in a row, and that area still looks really good. These brassicas are looking really good. they should do really well this year. I'm not worried about them at all. So at least I'm gonna have a decent stand of brassicas out here. So what I did though is I threw down that winter rye just on the side with the oats where the beans and the peas didn't come up. You guys hear me talk a lot about diversity in a food plot, so I'm just adding some more diversity out here. I'll have the oats, I'll have the winter rye, any of those beans and peas that do come up, a few will, but not as many as should have. And then the brassica side. Now the brassica side itself is diverse because it's not just one variety, it's several different brassicas in that blend. So hopefully I still have that nice diverse plot I always talk about. I'm definitely saving the other half with winter rye this year. And how we plant that when we want to save a plot like this is you want to throw down about 100 pounds per acre, and you can continue to plant winter rye every 3 weeks until it gets like below the low 40s. So it will continue to germinate, continue to grow into the low 40s. I think like 43 degrees. You'll hear some guys maybe say 41. It's definitely just low 40s. That's a very low temperature for germination for plants. So as long as you're staying above those temps, you can continue to plant more and more winter rye. And if you keep spacing that out every 3 weeks, you're going to keep having that like young, tender winter rye coming up, because that's what the deer like to eat on the most. So I can probably do another planting, maybe two. I'll have to watch the weather again. This is all dependent on what kind of weather you're getting. If we end up having a warm fall, you'll be able to plant later and later into the year. But that winter rye is also going to be the thing that stays green the longest going into the winter. So you will have the greenest chunk of the woods the latest into the season with winter rye planted, and that is going to be a huge advantage that time of year. Now the other thing winter rye does is it will come back next spring, and it is going to be the first thing to pop up in the spring, which gets your deer herd out of the winter just a little sooner. So down here in southeastern Wisconsin, I'm not too worried about a winter kill, but on my northwestern Wisconsin property, most of the deer in that part of the country die from winter exposure. So if we get a bad winter, I'm gonna lose a good chunk of my herd up there. And so a way to help alleviate and save just a little bit more of the herd than would otherwise die, I can plant winter rye up there. It will take them further into winter, the start of winter, with a full belly on that winter rye. And then it's going to get them out of winter a little bit earlier too, because it's going to green up right away in spring. So you end up shortening the winter for them just a little bit, and that ends up being enough to hopefully save a chunk of your deer herd that would have otherwise died of exposure that winter. So winter rye is just awesome to have. It's definitely always the thing I keep in my back pocket if I have a situation like this happen. So it's going to be what's going to save this plot this year. I have no worries that it'll grow. We're getting into this wet time of year. Even if there's no rain predicted, you wake up in the morning and the grass is all wet. So it's going to get some moisture. It's going to grow. It grows anywhere. I'm going to get that nice tender green coming up here. I'm not going to have any more bare spots in my food plot, and I'm going to have a great plot to hunt this season. So if you guys enjoyed this video and you haven't subscribed yet, please consider doing so, and I will catch you guys on the next one.